Hello and welcome to another episode of Steelfur Speaks with, of course, me, Steelfur. Uh, I like this intro because, some people may not know who they're listening to. And I get to remind you all that I am, of course, Steelfur, aka Finbar, London-based Flesh and Blood and other card game player. Just finished drafting a bit of Innistrad Werewolves Arena. That was fun. Obviously not going to any of the pre-releases for the new Magic set this weekend. I'm going to the Flesh and Blood pre-release. Like all sensible people, more than stop. I'm going a few. So, bit of housekeeping, I guess, to start off with. For those of you watching this video, rather than just listening, I've heard a decent chunk of people do just put my videos on in the background because I don't always use loads of graphics. I just like to talk about the game and things. Will have noticed I have a new logo. I hope you like it. I can make it a bit bigger for all of you. Just for a minute. It is a bear. Unsurprisingly, it's a bear with sort of metal helmet and really nice interlocking ring design, which a friend of mine made for me. Trevor Cuba, he is a graphics designer that I know from Elphaba. Obviously, he's graphic design as a job, so if you think this logo is cool and you need a logo for something or some sort of graphic design work, do let me know and I can pass along details. Other things that have been happening recently, Chris Sweeney, so Towering Titan, and I did an interview, kind of like 2 weeks ago, I would say, about playing in Road to Nationals, how I got into the game, all that kind of stuff. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video, so you can please check it out. He's another UK-based content creator. He's really good at talking, He's just a really great guy. We had a great chat for about an hour about all things Flesh and Blood. It was really positive. I really like that. Other stuff that's going on. So I've been doing some organizing in the background. And essentially, I'm dividing the channel up into roughly 3 segments, shall we say. As I start to make more content, I think it'll be a lot easier to have it sorted into playlists for you. So we're going to have Steelfur Speaks, which is my general, I'm talking about the game. Game's good. Game's great. Here's some interesting things. LSS might have messed this up. LSS made this work very well, that kind of thing. And that's still going to be called Steelfur Speaks because it features a more casual format that I'm trying to just keep going, where I like talking to people and like to listen. Dialogue that I have going with you guys who watch my videos. And we can all enjoy just sort of that free-flowing, stream of dialogue, right? About the game and things that come up as we're talking about it. We're also adding to that another segment, which I'm going to be calling in the short term, and it might stick, Steelfur Supremacy, which is going to be like the videos that are specifically about like high-level competitive decks, competitive play. So if you see a video that's branded like Steelfur Speaks, you should know that it's like more chilled. It might still be about gameplay, might be about something else Flesh and Blood related. And if you see something called Steelfur Supremacy, you should be able to go to it and expect like a deck tech or a tournament review or that kind of thing, right? Okay. And the third category, which may or may not happen depending on how much time I have to do it, will be called Steelfur Storytime, where I want to just talk about good things that are going on in the community, read lore to people. If people want to send me stories about them doing stuff and good things they've heard or drama that's happened or stuff like that, and I can read it out, that would be fun. It's a popular thing I guess some people do on YouTube, is read out other people's stories and tales about their local meta and funny things that have happened. So I'm thinking that might be it. Otherwise, there is lore of the game. I do have access to one of the lore books, and I was thinking about reading it out. Though I know there are a lot of other channels that do that as well, and I don't want to take away from them. My friend over at Fiendal's Library, Dan Tripp, has just put out a lore video on Briar, which also features his partner reading some lovely poetry that kind of synergizes with Briar about a lightning storm while you're stuck under an oak tree in a field. It's very, very good to listen. So I'm just giving some shout outs to the other content creators who are doing very interesting things here in the UK. So yeah, this has been, we're going to get into the meat of this video. So the meat of this video is, you're on your way to your first pre-release. It's a Saturday, it's a Sunday. you don't want to dive into, because there are some really serious videos out there by like people like Arsenal Pass, which I've obviously been listening to in terms of like all of the cards reviewed, and I'm going to do a review of all the cards in the set, but I'm not trying to rush it out this weekend before the pre-release because there's lots of other people that are already doing that. But you're going to your first pre-release, new set. Can I help you get a bit ready for that? I definitely can. And that's going to be what this video is going to be about. Just tips, advice for Aria, advice for the new set. I play this game a lot because I play this game, obviously to make content, but I play this game also for fun, right? As the first and foremost thing, fun is at the top of the mind. And I think it's kind of important that, like, when I say I play the game for fun, that means I play the game like every other day. So when I say my thoughts about Aria, I've played about 30 or 40 games by now. If I just toggle off this lovely background for a second, where is it? Because I was going to show you this anyway. Capture, there we go. You can see I've already got, mine and others. I've got like 15 prior decks, something. And we'll get back to that in a minute. But obviously, for the time being, I kind of just want to talk about, about Tales of Aria. So, Tales is one of these really, really well-made sets for Limited, which I always basically when you first hear about Flesh and Blood, you essentially have a problem when it comes to Limited, which is that none of the class cards interact, and there aren't actually that many good generics that are actually quite good, right? So you're building your Limited WTR deck. Really, you don't have that many choices because you're either playing, 10 class cards because you've got the nuts, or you're playing and you're playing all of the generics, or you're playing the class you have the most cards for, right? And there's not enough overlap between classes to actually make you have a lot of deck building. And initially, when you play WTR and Arcs, Limited and Sealed, not Draft, because Draft you just pick, and Draft has other problems, kind of tied to the same thing. When you play your Limited and your Sealed, you realize that, like, I can only really build one of these heroes or two of these heroes because I don't have the blues. I don't have the 6 power strength for Brute. I don't have the Go Again, the 0 cost for Ninja. I don't have any of those cards. So I'm just playing. I have this one choice. And I can't build some sort of hybrid where I include both of them. For example, if I sat down in a Magic Sealed event, I would be able to include blue and red, or I could include a splash of red in with my blue-green, and find a way to make the cards work for me in an interesting and innovative way. Flesh and Blood doesn't provide those sorts of things. Now, that's not to say that it's not a good sealed experience, because obviously that leads to a lot more overpowered decks. There's a balance to the format that is created by the fact that people can only play with a certain number of cards and will only get a certain power level of cards statistically out of their pack. So it's not to say that the system is broken because of that, because actually the system is balanced around that. So you shouldn't think that you're getting the short end of a stick. But it does sort of negatively impact the flexibility you have to pivot into something else. And especially during a draft. I mean, if you're a pack and a half into a draft, are you really going to pivot to a new class if you suddenly stop getting cards for that class? Or are you just going to keep going with the class and try and get enough generics to finish? Because if you pivot, you're going to have to fill up your deck with cracked baubles and stuff like that, which you don't want to do. So you kind of just stick with it, even though the draft suddenly went bad for you because you misread a tell or something. And then you end up with, loads of crappy generics and 10, 15 cards for the class you're playing. You're in a really rough situation. You couldn't really, pivot at that point and end up with 20 cards for another class. You wouldn't be in a better situation. So that is a problem that Flesh and Blood has. Monarch felt like it was a solution to that, but it really wasn't, because the ratio of Shadow to Light cards in packs was never really on the money. And I played about 6 or 7 or 8 sealed Monarch tournaments, which obviously isn't a lot, but in terms of how many people have been playing, it's enough. And essentially what it came down to a lot of times was, well, I only got 7 Shadow cards and I got 15 Light cards. And I got about roughly 10 of all the class cards, but obviously I have to play Light, because otherwise I'm, again, dipping into that pool of, bad generics I don't want to play, right? And, and building the best deck. But then you got Prism, who was like, well, I got 10 good Prism cards, so I may as well just play those and win with them. Because the format was slightly skewed to her being better, at least in Sealed. The But Monarch didn't really solve that problem. Like, yes, you could draft light and then pick a hero, but really you couldn't, because the light and shadow cards work very differently for the, for the heroes that have them. Bolton wants his cheap cards. Prism wants slightly stronger cards, bigger cards. So you're not really drafting light. You really want the class cards more than anything. Now we come to Tails, and obviously Tails is, and let's flip over to the actual set now, because Tails obviously, and again, if you want good primers for this, I know Fiendal's Library just put out a really good what to do before your pre-release thing. Arsenal Pass has a 2-hour long podcast about Limited, which if you really want to prep for the things, watching that would be really good. Obviously, those players have been doing very well at their own callings that have just happened, making the top 62, even higher than that in some cases. One of their friends made the top 8, so they've been doing quite well. But obviously the set is themed around these 3 elements: Earth, Lightning, Ice. The heroes can include 2 of those elements based on which hero you pick. Briar is Earth and Lightning. Oldhim is Earth and Ice. And because of that, because you can draft or you can choose in your sealed pack all of these and all of the elemental cards and the class card, you basically have a lot more deck building options to be like, well, I've got a great Earth pool, which means I can go either Briar or Oldhim. And then what determines your choice is going to be how good your Lightning pool is, how good your class pool is. So you're going to have clear signals as to what to choose, which is very important in Seal. But you're not actually going to be... Ooh, my face. Can't have that, can I? You're not going to have that choice. It's going to be signposted, so it's not going to be super difficult to choose, because you're going to be like, well, I've got 5 really good Guardian cards, I've got 8 really good Earth cards, so let's go Oldhim, and then splash in other stuff from Ice and stuff to make it work. But it does give you more flexibility to make a skill-based decision when you get into that actual building your deck in Seal. In terms of things I think people should know without doing a full set review, if you think so, let's start off with ratios, right? So say I have 10 cards that have Earth Fusion. I want to guarantee they go off in this. There's something killed, and we're not going to go into it too much because I can't remember exactly what it's called. I think it's hypergenomic theory or something. But basically, as a statistics thing, all that is the amount of successes, the amount of times you'll see something, a particular value, within a certain sample based on how many times you take stuff from that sample every time, right? So basically what that means is if I play 10 Earth cards and I draw 4 cards a turn, I will see on average 1 Earth card or more every hand, right? And that's kind of the breakpoint where we start to think about Tales of Aria deck building, and this is relevant to Constructed as well as Limited, because I don't want anyone who's listening to this video coming to me after the tournament and saying, well, I got a load of really good Lightning Fusion cards, but I could never get Lightning Fuse to work. Because if the Lightning cards you got are really good, then you need to be running 10 of these Lightning cards minimum just to hit them, right? And you should not be, if you get the ratio right, ever missing a Lightning Fusion at all, or not very often, based on what you've already played and what you've pitched and all that kind of stuff. You should be able to game it in a way that you get your fusions every time by playing 10 or 15, right? And that's an important understanding to know, right? Because I've got a load of really good Lightning Fusion cards, but I've only got 2 good Lightning cards. Should I play those Lightning Fusion cards, or should I play the cards that have Earth Fusion and I have 8 to 10 decent Earth cards? You should play Earth, because you're going to get those good Earth Fusion cards off, and your core is going to be the decent Earth cards, which will kind of come together to have a slightly better deck than if you happen to high roll and get your Lightning Fusion card that's amazing with the 3 good Lightning cards in your deck. But it may be the case that the Lightning cards, even though they are filler, are not terrible filler, and you could just play them anyway. And that's the kind of decision process you're going to have to try and think about, is what is my ratio of fusion to actual cards that enable a fusion, and how am I balancing out that ratio to understand that I want to make sure I draw that Earth card every time. And that's kind of important in terms of how the heroes play. Like, you know, Briar is great because she has these arcane pings that get through because there's no null rune in the set below legendary, which means it's very hard to block arcane. So if you get something like Bramble Sparks, Blossoming Spellblades, you know, Force of Natures, those kind of things, you're going to be really, really good because you're going to be pinging for damage. That damage is going to come in for more damage. Where's Force of Nature? Show that to you. And you know, if you get some Entwine Earths, you'll be hitting really hard. Is it here? Some call out cards. Explosive Growth is what I'm talking about. Not Force of Nature. Sorry, I misspoke. Explosive Growth is a fantastic card in Limited. It's one of the reasons it's a rare. You pay 1, you attack. It deals 1 arcane damage. If it was fused, whenever it deals damage, attacks you control get +1 this combat chain. If it's fused, it includes itself. So if the arcane damage goes through, this comes in as a 1 for 4. And it buffs your next attack. So if you have Go Again, it's a really good card. I mean, there are loads. This is the thing. I'm doing this video because there are things that I want to teach you guys not to miss. I'm giving you signposts for places where you can get like amazingly in-depth competitive advice because I don't really want to give that in this video just because I'm sending you to these pre-releases. You're going to have fun. Obviously, there's some prizes on the line. But ultimately, the fun of this pre-release is going to be learning what works and what doesn't work, right? And I'm going to come at you next week with so I've built 30 Briar decks. This is what I think is good for Briar. But I'm not doing that now because I kind of want you guys to come with me on that journey. Like, I have an idea of what's good in these cards, but the sealed is going to be fun. And I really think you guys should just have a look at your sealed and try and figure out what's good and what's fun and go along with it, really. You know, obviously, if you get some Majestics or something like that, they might push you towards a certain hero. Kind of follow your gut. Don't just be like, well, I have to play Briar because Steelfur said that Briar is amazing because she gets her arcane damage through. I actually feel like from what I've heard from the calling that whilst Briar was the easiest hero to build because she just had arcane damage and non-attack actions, you went with her and you won some games. But once you got up to like the serious games, you know, people were winning with all the decks because they all had like strengths to them. So don't. I'm not trying to push you to pick. You should play Briar because she does arcane damage, which people can't block. I actually think they're all relatively strong. And you know, obviously, if you're confused, just chuck some stuff together, have a bit of fun, but don't necessarily feel pressured into playing one hero because you've been told that it's secretly, you know, it's the way to win. You know. One of those things. Winning at pre-releases feels great because there are mats up and the prizes and that, but it's also just there to have fun and learn the cards in casual environment. Yeah, that's kind of my initial thoughts on the pre-release. We could go through this card by card, and what I think is good and what I think is bad, but I don't think that's the real mood that I'm trying to capture this evening. I'm really super keen for Aria. You know, all of this art, like So Tomorrow is gorgeous. Stir the Wildwood is good, especially the all art that has a bear in it from Team Covenant. So I'll be looking for 3 of those at some point. You know, you can sort me out if you've got them coming. Tome of Harvest is great. Titan's Fist is great. You can actually use 2 of these as one-handed weapons if you can figure out some way to get Guardian Go Again. You can dual wield either Winter's Wail or Titan's Fist, but you know, good luck getting Go Again. Other fun things to know from the set. I mean, here's some fun ones for you. So if you find Ball Lightning, which I think is closer to the front, bring up Ball Lightning. The Ball Lightning is a very interesting card because whenever a lightning or elemental action card would deal damage this combat chain, instead it deals that much damage +1. You might be thinking, hey now, Steelfur, if I block that damage with, say it's arcane damage, if I block that arcane damage with Arcane Barrier, it doesn't deal the extra 1 because it's not going to deal damage. Which I will say, and this is something to remember, in the official rules, the use of the word would here creates a replacement effect for the arcane damage that would be dealt, right? So you would deal 1 arcane damage when arcane damage goes on the stack. Okay? Therefore, if I would deal arcane damage, it deals that much damage +1. Now, if we look up something like a Null Rune Hood, for example, Null Rune Hood, because I'm from the UK, if your hero would be dealt arcane damage, you may pay 1 instead. If you do, prevent 1 arcane damage that source would deal. So the keen and the wide-eyed among you, the wise-eyed even, will have noticed that they both say would, which means we have a timing clash in this game. My arcane damage will do damage. It would do damage. My opponent would be able to use Arcane Barrier, but when there is a timing clash in Flesh and Blood, the active player gets to choose which ability to resolve first. It means I, who am attacking with my Ball Lightning, am the active player. It means that when I say my arcane damage would deal another one, that triggers first because it will, it's on the stack, so it will deal damage, and then my opponent is allowed to trigger their Arcane Barrier. Then I layer that under it. But my Arcane is already coming in for 2. So if you play Ball Lightning and they only have 1 Arcane Barrier, which there is only 1 Arcane Barrier at Legendary in this set, there is none at Common, your opponent cannot block both of those if you have played a Ball Lightning before. And that is something that will come up again, so do keep it in mind. Don't get turned around by it. Other things to note, obviously you can't fuse the card that you've pitched. You have to fuse separately. Remember, fusion is, as an additional cost to play this card, you reveal a card of a specific element that's asked for in the fusion, so lightning fusion here. And then if you've done that, you get the benefit of the fusion card. You cannot obviously reveal a card that you have pitched, and because it's an additional cost, it happens after the pitch window. The appropriate window is play, pitch, then fuse. So obviously don't try and fuse the card you have pitched. Arrows can only be played from Arsenal, which is why Lexi has Shiver as her default bow. Blossoming Spellblade lets you play non-attack action cards from your graveyard. If you get this is fantastic. Play Briar. You'll kick ass as long as you can meet the fusion conditions. If you play a non-attack action as an instant, then you will get Go Again. Sorry, one second. You will get Go Again when that card is. So if I have already used my action point to play an attack, but I then follow up with a Go Again as an instant, I can in fact just get Go Again and then attack again. So that's an interesting interaction to watch out for. If someone does pull a Blossoming Spellblade, if someone pulls a Spellbound Creepers, the legendary, it could be happening as well. So do just keep an eye on it. The other thing to keep a very close eye on, I guarantee there will be mistakes with this, is of course the channel spells. So let's just bring up Lake Frigid here. Fantastic card. Really frustrating to play against, especially if you're playing like one of the old school aggro decks like Katsu or Chain. We're calling them old school now because they're dead. But they're not. But let's get into that later on. Is just to remember, so at the beginning of your end phase, which includes the turn this was played on, you put a flow counter on. And then you destroy it if you have not put an ice card onto the bottom of your pitch zone on the bottom of the deck for each flow counter on the card. Right? So the turn you play it, you have to pitch an ice card or it gets destroyed. People will get caught up by this. It's the same for Channel Mount Heroic and Channel Vault Haven, whatever it's called. I can't remember what the lightning one is called. Let's look it up. Come on. We've got the whole internet here. Channel Thunderstep. Here we go. It's the same for all 3 of them. People will make this mistake. They will think that it happens the turn after. Obviously, don't let them. If you're playing a casual game, if you're trying to win the tournament and you're in a tense game and they make a mistake, you can choose how to deal with that. It's a pre-release, so maybe just let them off, but they've already pitched it, so it probably just gets blown up. Yeah, and then it's important to remember that obviously has to be done every single turn. The next turn they have to pitch 2 lightning cards. If they don't, it gets blown up. And people will just make mistakes with this. I've seen it happen in the games we've played already. They'll put it out there. They'll think it happens the next turn. It will get destroyed without ever actually doing anything. Especially for Channel Lake Frigid, because it works on your opponent's turn mostly. Obviously you don't want that happening. For the other 2, if it gets blown up on the same turn, it can be all right. Really, there aren't huge amounts of defense reactions in the set, so Channel Lake Frigid doesn't have a huge amount of use. It doesn't go to your opponent's next turn. But Channel Mount Heroic and Channel Thunderstep can be worth it just for the turn you're playing. I've definitely used this just to get +3. Hilariously, I have played this as an instant with the Spellbound Creepers, get +3 on an attack that was already hitting. Was blocked for 6. Then I hit, and then my next attack came in for 6 as well. It was beautiful. Briar's a real headache to build, but she's actually very, very fascinating. Yeah, and that's kind of where we are getting to really on this. So keep an eye out for that. Are there any other things I want to call out from the set as just being some things that might come afoul? It's worth remembering that a lot of Lexi's cards say whenever an attack hits this turn, they take an effect. But if you block them, that doesn't happen. So things like Buzzbolt, we just saw Chilling Blizzard Bolt, which gives a Frostbite token. It's worth noting they apply to every single attack after they're played, including themselves. So it's just worth watching those Lexi chains where if you don't block properly, they're going to come in and come over for more damage. And then it's worth remembering, of course, Electrify does the same thing. It is worth remembering against Briar that all of these things that add on damage, like Electrify, like Arcane, do trigger her ability because they're all worded in a specific way that adds the damage to the card. So, like Bramble Spark, for instance, the next action card you play gains when you attack with this, deal 1 arcane damage to target hero. So they are all phrased in a way so that the arcane damage is a separate source and also comes from the attack, which means that embodiment of Earth tokens will trigger for both the 1 arcane, 2 arcane if you play 2 Bramble Sparks, and of course the actual physical damage if it hits. So just do be aware of that. These kind of like extra nuance in terms of how many tokens Briar is going to get. The fact that all of Lexi's hits are going to get that big effect. And the Guardian stuff, like one of the things I think a lot of people, let's bring them up, are going to fall afoul of is the Old Him hero ability. So obviously, as a reaction, you pay 3. If an ice card is pitched this way, put a card from your hand on top of your deck. Just make sure when you're going for that big combo that like you have another card if you're playing against Old Him. Like pitch 1, have 3 in hand. Don't plan to block and then be like, oh well, I played my. If it's a non-attack action, an attack action, that's fine. But if you're trying to go attack action, something else, that something else is very likely to end up on the top of your deck. So just don't get caught out by that ice pitch here, because a lot of Old Hymns will be using that ice pitch to get that extra effect. And I don't really want anyone caught out by that. Because the other effects, like for instance, Lexi gives Go Again, doesn't she? And creates Frostbite tokens. Frostbite tokens are fairly easy to handle. If you're worried there's going to be a lot of Frostbite tokens coming out, you can just put more blues in your deck, and then even if they do come out, you're not going to be overly taxed because you'll just pitch a blue and pay for something. And Frostbite tokens, so long as you don't have like 4 or 5 of them, haven't really been looking like that big of a threat. Obviously, if you're going to get like 4 or 5, you may as well just block with your whole hand and then just take a turn off or Arsenal or something. And then just go next, because you're not going to do much if there's like 6 or 7 of them out, or 4 or 5 of them. But if it's only like 2 or 3, and you've got blues in hand, just ignore them and just play your hand as normal. And don't like get intimidated by the fact that they exist, because obviously if you have enough blues, you'll pay for them. Other little things I think will catch people out. So Duskblade obviously loses its counters if you haven't played an attack action and a non-attack, and it only gets +1 if you attack with a non-attack action and non-attack. I have seen people tick this up just because they've played a non-attack and an attack action, but not actually swung with the Duskblade. Not how it works. And also, if you don't play those 2 cards, it does disappear. So, there we go. So, I don't know if there's anything else I particularly want to talk about now. Obviously, I've got a plan for next week in terms of we're going to have some Lexi decks coming out. Not Lexi. We're going to have some Briar decks, which I know everyone's going to be super excited in. I'll be giving kind of an update on how I'm going to prep for nationals and things that are going to be involved in that, and kind of like give an idea of how I think it is a good idea to prep for nationals in your tournament, in your country, and how I think you can get an advantage, and like prep, as a sneak peek. So one of the pieces of advice is like, if you want to win a game like this competitively, you can't do it alone, right? And it's kind of like a bit of a sneak peek for what we'll talk about next week. But I just want to highlight. So I obviously have a group that I test and I play with. And if you talk to the people who are winning at the calling or winning, doing well and consistently well, they'll all say the same. They've identified, and this is very important, a group of people who have the same goal as them, which is to play a lot and win. And essentially, they are spending the time with a similar-minded group of people who are analytically focused on the game, is this card the best card we can be playing in this slot? Is this card the best card for that matchup? Does this other card perform like better than it in 5% of cases? If so, should we play it? How does this game match up pair if I change 2 cards and play it 100 times? You know, that kind of analytics of we're going to set aside a day, 2 days a week to just sit down, jam games, talk about what worked, talk about what didn't work, tweak the deck, test it into a gauntlet of new games, and see which decks are winning and which decks aren't winning, and what we can recommend. And if you want to be competitive, you need to find people like that. Preferably locals, like playing online is great, but preferably people in your local environment you can meet up with once or twice a week and sit and play cards with, because you're all going to be so much more invested if it is you and your local sitting together and doing this. But if they have to be online, you know, there are these little communities springing up all over the place. And, you know, someone like Tyler, I think he's in, I can't remember, they posted their team name earlier, the guy who won the calling, and there was loads of people at other teams and things. So, you know, these are cropping up. If you have the aspirations to be a serious player, you probably need to be honest and make the commitment as well, because you're not gonna win by just playing, you know, one gaming night a week, 3 hours against random people at your local armory who aren't competitively geared up. You know, you're not gonna win the nationals, which is part draft, without drafting once or twice a week up on the road to nationals, so you can figure out what a good signal is and what a good tell is. And if someone left this card on pack 5 with, you know, from Briar, then no one to my right is drafting Briar, and you need to be able to make those calls in the short amount of time you have to draft in a calling, and the only way you get that is by practice. So it's kind of like practice important. And yeah, just leave on a happy note. Obviously, the calling happened, and I heard this, and I'm hearing the same thing about Gen Con. Loads of people wearing masks, loads of people taking care of their own health and other people's, being very respectful. We saw that Twitter thread. I'm going to bring that up, actually. I really like this Twitter thread. One of the cosplayers. Let's have a bit of a read, because I think this is really actually quite positive. Yeah, I think I follow her now. I followed her. Yeah, her name is Tappy Toeclaw, a professional and was invited to the... So you should definitely follow her on Twitter, not just because she also has these amazing... let's just... I mean, can we just stop for a second and just appreciate that she is in a car driving down the road, not only wearing amazing Charmander socks, but also with a sleeping Charmander on the dash. And you'll see I've already responded here with life goals. I don't use my Twitter for too much nerdy stuff, but when I do, you know, it's great. So we're going to fly down here, talk about Gen Con. We're not talking about Gen Con. Where are we? Okay, here we go. Okay, so you all want to know how Fab Las Vegas went. I know you have questions about the first big TCG event hosted since everything shut down back in March of 2020. That is it. We are the first big TCG event that happened. Magic hasn't started. There hasn't been an event this large in the US in ages. I've had a recovery nap with my sleepy Charmander. Fantastic. We love the Charmander. Let's unpack how it went this past weekend. For context, she went with 2 other cosplayers. One did Dorinthia and the other one did Prism. You can see photos of them on this page. Gobethix and CS Sprankle Run, as well as the professor who was there as well from Tolarian Community College. The event was hosted by Channel Fireball. I've done a great deal of work for them in the past. Take this as my bias disclosure. She's obviously very fond of Channel Fireball. I'm also a great extrovert, so I jumped at the chance to go. Who would not go to the largest event? I mean, obviously, if you had COVID worries, it's perfectly legitimate. But if you're double vaccinated and you've had COVID and, you know, you're starting to go a bit crazy, I can understand anyone being like, I've got to go to that event. And I have similar feelings about the Utrecht event that's coming up. You know, is it the smartest thing to go to a big event in 2021 with coronavirus everywhere? No, but I have got double vaccinations. I don't go outside that much. I don't meet a lot of people. I work from home. And also, I've already had coronavirus once. So I'm considering myself in the lower risk category, and I'm willing to go to something for my, say, sanity rather than necessarily for my other health reasons. She's also giving us more context. I'm literally a scientist. I can't write about my experiences without the full context. She was paid there, and had already started playing Fab. So this is fantastic, because she is a Magic player. I know from her tweets. So she had already started playing Fab. Was considering attending the offer, working the event when someone said, "Hey, do you want to come?" Everyone was wearing masks. A few people had them wrong. if she corrected them, they didn't kick up a fuss. They just said, thanks for letting me know. The event staff also had spare masks to hand out to everyone. That's fantastic. No one was wearing a compromised mask. No one was wearing some sort of, I've cut it, but I'm still wearing one. No one asked them to take off their masks for cosplay. And why would you? Because their masks perfectly fit their costume. Like, if Prism's art had Prism wearing this mask, I would not think it strange. If Dorinthia's art had her wearing this mask, these masks match their outfits. So that's fine. Like, who's calling criticism? People did ask if they could take pictures, but everyone was very respectful of their space. And this is kind of interesting. Like, I've never been awkwardly touched less as a cosplayer. And everyone can vouch for how often we get awkwardly touched in photos. And I mean, that's people like putting their arm around or trying to get a bit too close. And obviously, you're a professional. You taking photos with people. You don't want people trying to like pretend they're your best friend or like give you a hug or something like that. It's like, I'm working with, how many people today. I'd rather not get your sweat and stuff on me. Kind of reflecting on what she said here. Too many cosplayers in the past have had to wash nasty dude's armpit sweat off the shoulder pieces of costumes after a day in the trenches. So it seems like maybe coronavirus is like helped move along something that should be happened anyway, where people like aren't, are respecting cosplayers' rights to not, just because they're there to take photos with you. And obviously, they will take photos with you because that's one of the reasons they're there, is to help enhance the experience and be a visual representation of the game and the game's marketing. That doesn't mean they're there for you to like get too close. Don't do that shit. But like people copying their hand gestures, being really cool, and just like making cool photos with them. The event felt very open, planned very well. Everyone just seemed to be very respectful of what's going on. She was given plenty of time to take breaks, and just taken care of. People with other cosplays who are just like amateur cosplayers were coming in and joining in. I mean, this is a fantastic photo of her just with another cosplayer, who's obviously done a homemade costume. And you might be a little intimidated by someone who's got like a professional cosplay costume, but don't be, they're friendly people. Just go up and say hi. And then just really positive about Legend Story Studios. A whole team of people who are on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, everything. Just doing videos and putting stuff out there. And everyone just had a really good day. So it's really just good to read these positive things. People being really happy about cosplayers. I have seen this myself in Alpha and things like that, where some people go full in on the cosplay and other people are there professionally and they don't really understand the cosplay and they're kind of negative about it. It's like, why are you doing that? Why are you wasting your time? When actually, I think everyone, like, if you main Prism and you see someone in a Prism outfit, what are you going to do? You're going to be like, that is amazing. Can I have a photo? You look really good. Like, you're not going to be like, what are you doing? Like, we're here to win. We're here for a tournament. You're going to be like, no. Like, so the Flesh and Blood community, really positive. And I think this is just a reflection of the community we're building up. And you'll see that a lot of the community leaders, like Saint and people like that, are featured in this thread as people who have come over to the cosplayers and been really positive about them. And I think it really speaks to something that if you look at the big YouTube personalities we have, right, like Saint, Red Zone Road, DM Armada, the guys who were streaming this event, if you look at them, like, inevitably positive people, community orientated, friendly, respectful. Everyone has good bad days, that's fine, but like, if you run into them at an event, even though they're busy, they're working, they're not going to be rude. They're just going to be like, look, I'm working, I've got some stuff to do, right? And we see that reflected in all the lead content creators for the game at the moment are those really positive figures who are basically going to be the people who kind of set the tone for what everyone who's joining this game is going to follow. And that's kind of why Vegas is so important. So obviously it's important for the reasons that we got 1,000 people and that Channel Fireball had 1,500 people watching. And like, that's why it's so important for, for people to see it and it being very visible. And the Magic players are starting to ask, what is this game that Channel Fireball was streaming? Can I learn to play? How do I get a Blitz deck? How do I give it a try? All those things are kind of to happen. And that is amazing for the game. But, a lot of conversations are going on as well between people who've been playing this game for a while. We're going to get this influx of new Magic players, of new players from other card games. But the community we have right now is really good. How do we make sure that the negative elements in other card games are moderated or feel like they have to take care of themselves and not be, negative in our community when they join. And that's, for me, what comes out of Vegas and these other big events, is all the people I hear saying everyone was polite, everyone was friendly, everyone was respectful of mask things, everyone was respectful of your space, your time, respectful of people like cosplayers who are working there. All of these things add up to a very, very good understanding and impression of, I wouldn't say the sort of people we want joining the Flesh and Blood community. That's exclusive or exclusionary. But I mean the sort of community experience that we are fostering and you have to accept if you want to be part of the community. And it's fine for a community to lay out that in terms of actions as to what we expect from other people joining in. And if a good standard is set early on in the game, then we can maintain that as the game continues to grow. And that will be vital for the future of Flesh and Blood as a fun game that you enjoy playing, where these people will come and cosplay and be really happy to come and cosplay if the job is offered to them. Not be like, okay, well, I did that event last year and there were loads of creepy people, so I don't want to do it again, even though you're offering me money. Like, thanks, but no thanks. Whereas, you know, if people have positive experiences, they keep coming back. And like, just to call out a few things, because this thread is just full of positivity. I will give a link to her Twitter. Please give her a Twitter follow. Please like this thread because it deserves just all the like that it can get. But you know, she said people coming up to her, asking for single requests, one-on-one selfies, which she was surprised by because people were so invested in the main hero that they play. Which I'm going to get back to in a bit because we're going to wrap up this episode talking about, well, it's going to be the next episode, but I'll give a bit of a hint of it about how the scarcity of tails is going to tie into the Nationals meta. But, we have, Twitter literally told me okay, so she had to split up her pen and post into multiple points. We also saw more women at this event than I've ever seen at any other TCG. I can't say it's 100% accurate count, but there was some rad lady representation, women of color, trans ladies obviously included. I've seen trans people at events as well. It's fantastic. Please come along. I know certainly the events I run, I have a zero tolerance policy for any sort of just any sort of discrimination. If you are the cause of such drama, you will be asked to take care of your shit or leave. And if you can't handle it and you can't handle being told to treat other people with respect, then you will be kindly asked to not sit down and play cards with us. Because I mean, you have to have a zero tolerance policy of this kind of thing. And I'm grateful that I haven't had to have a conversation like that in Flesh and Blood. I have had to have it in other card games that I have TO'd for. And I haven't yet had to have one in Flesh and Blood, which I think, again, one of these other positive signs that I keep calling about. A lot of this is just her being really happy that there is someone covering a TCG, and just being really positive about Flesh and Blood. I wanted to show you guys this because I can never talk about the positivity in this community enough. And if you look at Red Zone Rogue and DM Armada and Kitchen Table TCG, all really fantastic US content creators, all of the videos they have put out this week have just been about how great a time they had, how great it was meeting everyone. I'm honestly very jealous. And just like how fantastic it was. And obviously they were doing the casting and they did an amazing job. So, I think we just need to call out those people for being brilliant. And obviously there was some negativity. There was some stuff being stolen from people. Unfortunately, that is the sort of thing that happens at larger events. There are people who know cold foils are worth money and are willing to grab them. Yeah, and there's just all the responses as well was just like, yeah, I'm so glad you had such a great time. There's pages and pages of just really positive responses. I think this is someone doing a Briar cosplay. Can we just say how awesome this is? I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, but you've shared this. Someone has shared this for you. You're going to a pre-release in like a blue gown and with makeup on. Like, power to you, right? Because that's what's coming out of Vegas for me. It's this positivity. Not just about, yay, loads of people play the game. Isn't the game growing? We had 1,000 people playing in the tournament. We had 1,500 people watching for about 7 hours on stream both days. I was one of those. The viewer numbers on those streams did not drop below 1,300 over 2 days of streaming for 14 hours a day. And there were lots of people being like, this game looks really good. I'm going to give it a try. How do I get in? How much does it cost? There were some trolls. There's always trolls. But like, people were incredibly positive. And I just want to reflect that in the last sort of half of this podcast. This is what I kind of mean when I say Steelfur Speaks is going to be a bit more ramble. We've covered a few topics here. One thing I am going to get better at is putting in bookmarks so people will know when one topic starts and one ends, because that's kind of like on my to-do list of things to sort out. So just to end up with one note, for those of you still listening, so obviously please like and subscribe this podcast, and a bit more about what I'm doing in the future. So there's a video coming out next week where I'm talking about how I think the meta is going to be impacted by the Tales of Aria heroes for the national championships, and why it's not going to be to the extent that you want. And that's a bit of a teaser, but essentially there's a sentence here that a lot of you will understand, and that is meta defined by scarcity. There's only a certain amount of Tales of Aria actually being delivered in Europe. We have 3 96-player nationals happening in Poland, the UK, and Germany. And how much Tales is any individual person going to get to play those heroes? And if you look at heroes like Briar, for example, or Lexi, any of them really, if you're playing Oldhim, you need the hammer, and to play the hammer, you need the shield, which is a legendary. Heart of Frost is a very good card. You might need that as well. Crown of Seeds is amazing in Oldhim. And, you may as well play the Crater Fist for armor or something like that. So we're already at a point where you're talking about 3 legendaries for Oldhim. The legendaries that you can put in Briar, you can run Crown of Seeds and Shock Charmers, Spellbound Creepers. That's 3 legendaries from the set. You run Tunic with that, which is a 4th legendary. And even if you run Skullcap and Tunic and Grasp, and you can run, I guess you can run Skullcap, Tunic, Grasp, and Scalers. So if you had your chain set, then you would be fine. But you're still going to need all those Majestics and things like that. Going to be a lot of problems with first edition supply. I know some stores are getting 10 boxes, some stores are getting 20, some are getting quite a few, but not a lot of stores are getting a lot. And the other thing, of course, to remember is that Draft is a double format event. It is not just constructed, bring all the cards you have. It is also Draft. And how much Draft are people going to have while they're simultaneously trying to get cards to build decks with to practice CC, right? That's the big thing. Practice Draft, you need to practice CC. You can't practice CC in an official capacity, like in an armory or something, without opening those packs. You can't draft if the packs are open. So there's going to be a lot of proxying now. Just to get this out of the way. If you are preparing for nationals and you want to optimize it, you should just do this, right? Take all of your boxes of Tales that you and your group of people you're going to draft with have managed to secure, right? Take the decks you think you want to build, Briar, Oldhim, Lexi, that you're going to test, and proxy the fuck out of it. Print everything proxied. Don't open the boxes, right? When the boxes time to come round to open the boxes, draft with the boxes until you've got no more boxes left, and then take all the cards and build the decks that you've play tested with them, right? Don't just crack open your boxes being like, well, we'll get more. You won't get more. Don't just crack open your boxes being like, we don't need to practice draft. Draft is easy. I guarantee you I will be practicing draft, right? I have boxes coming. I will be keeping them sealed. I will be probably phantom drafting them with my friends. This is a good tool in your arsenal as well. If you're not aware what phantom draft is where 8 of us draft, but the cards are mine, which means at the end of the draft, they all just go back in the box. I get mine. It doesn't matter if you open a legendary, I open a legendary. You are there to practice draft, and therefore it doesn't matter if you're drafting with my cards or not. You're not there to pay me a £10 to get my boosters, because that will put a lot of people off drafting when they only have a certain amount of first edition. Like if I only get 1 box, I'm not selling that to my friends so that they can draft and that my friend across the table from me can crack open the legendary that I should have opened. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to open it myself, get the legendary, and you'll see where it is. A phantom draft in agreed upfront just takes care of all of that. Friends don't have to pay, so there's no reluctance of, well, I don't want to spend £10, £20 this week doing 2 drafts. You have the box. You get whatever's in the box back at the end of the day, and you can do as many drafts as people in your group have boxes without worrying about more money spent or people not getting people getting legendaries from someone else's box, and all that drama just goes away. Phantom drafts are going to be a fantastic tool for this Road to National season, one that I highly encourage people to use, and of course that is one of the solutions. So that is my initial recommendation, and we're going to talk about this more in next week's video about how to start off your Road to Nationals preparation. And I want to get that message out there loud and clear, which is why I'm going to put it at the start of the next video, that if you really want to prepare for Nationals, you should seriously consider not opening any of your Tales of Aria First Edition and finding 7 other people who also want to win your national tournament and just drafting twice a week or once a week, because half of those rounds are draft. 12 rounds, 6 draft. And it's 2 drafts as well. So you can't just get lucky and get an amazing deck and cruise your way into the top cut. You're going to have to show consistent skill in a draft to get in there. It means you need practice. And the only way you can practice Tales, because Unlimited is not going to come out before Nationals, any Nationals, which again, we're going to talk about next week, is a big problem for LSS. Obviously not deliberate. Obviously not something they've planned. It's just that at the moment, global shipping is not something you can plan very well. You can't guarantee you're going to get the Tales of Aria Unlimited in before Nationals, and you have to book all the spaces for Nationals. And you have to tell stores when to do them, and you have to run them before everyone goes on Christmas holiday in December. And there's loads of other considerations that means that Nationals has to happen in September and November. Sorry, in October and November. But Tales isn't going to be out. And that's going to cause a lot of problems. And the start of the next video is going to be talking about how that is going to be addressed. But that is going to be a Steelfur Supremacy video. This is obviously a Steelfur Speaks video where we've rambled across a lot of different topics. Just chatting to you guys. I really hope that if you've listened to this, based on the start of the video, you felt really, happy about going into the pre-release and feeling like I've got some good energy here. I'm excited to learn about cards. I'm excited to get the deck building going. I see 12 Earth cards, and Steelfur said that if I see 12 Earth cards and I have some really good Earth Fusion cards, I can build that deck that I want. Okay, I really want that to happen. And obviously, I hope you're feeding off the same positivity that I am from the cosplayers and from the Vegas event, where Fab is just doing very, 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 very well. And it seems to keep going from strength to strength. Everyone I know who's trying the game just really likes it. We just keep going around in circles. I just can't stop playing the game myself. And thank you all, because obviously if you've listened this far, you clearly can't stop playing the game or listening to me. So I will take it, and thank you very much. Obviously do hit like and subscribe. I love making content for you guys. And I will be expanding the sort of content I do, how in depth it is. Some of that may go on my Ko-fi page, which I link below, just because it will be in written form. Some of it may go to subscribers only, that kind of thing, because I do want to start giving out sort of, basically, if I'm going to take the time to say, right, an hour's worth of notes on how to play a deck, which I can do, I could have done that for Katsu. I could have written a written guide. That does start to dig into the amount of time I have to do other things in my week. I obviously have a full-time job. I obviously have a lot of Fab to play. And now, how do you justify that to yourself, right? Now, if I do that and a couple people give me, a couple quid is a pound, or, a couple dollars, whatever you want to call it, a month to just write stuff like that, I can do it. I'll find the time. But if it's kind of like, it's not about the money. It's kind of about how, because I'm never going to ask for huge sums. Like I'm not that kind of minded. But it's kind of like, how much do people want it? Like, if people want it so much that, like, yeah, okay, cool, a couple pounds a month, that's not a big deal. Thanks for all your hard work. Then I'm like, okay, I can, in my mind, get the mental energy, because I've got a, I'm a data analyst full time, so I have a lot of time spent at a computer as it is. I obviously go to the gym, I play cards, I have a girlfriend, all that stuff takes up time, and I don't always necessarily have the mental energy for that next level of content creation. But I get that energy from positive feedback, and I've had really great experiences recently where people have met me at events and been like, hey, I really like your content, it's really good. I enjoy your analytical views of things, your in-depth insights. I just listened to the whole thing. And that's been feeling really, really good. And you know what? If you go to an event with like 30 or 40 people and like 5 or 6 people come up to you and say, I think your videos are fantastic, please keep making them. You know what you do when you get home? You make another video. And that's kind of where it ties in on stuff like Ko-fi. Like, do I need the money? Do I expect to have a secondary job doing YouTube stuff? If I do at some point, fantastic, like great, because I enjoy talking to people. And if it manifests in terms of me selling like sideboard guides and things like that, then cool. But at the moment I don't. But what that kind of assistance, I guess, just highlights incredibly, along with follows and subscribes and stuff, is just how much of an impact I'm making. Because as I'm wrapping up this thing, I just want to say, like, to all the people, because I'm now, I'm a bit baffled because about a month ago, I've been making YouTube videos for about 4 or 5 years now, for Elphaba mostly, sort of niche card games. So I only ever had 200 followers, and then I started making videos for Flesh and Blood, and obviously I won some tournaments which got a lot of press to my deck tech and things like that. And since then, I've just had a lot of conversations with people who've been like, "Your deck tech really helped me get into the game. I come in from Magic. I just needed a deck and I understand how to play. Thanks a lot." I've had loads of conversations with helping people figure out how to play Katsu, like how am I playing Katsu, all this other stuff. And I have had conversations with the people. I'm always happy to talk to people for a bit, help them sort out their decks, help them play a bit better. And then they've come back to me a few days later being like, I actually came top 8 at that tournament, or I actually did. I went 4-3 when I used to go 0-6. And, hearing that kind of feedback, it makes me just want to help people more. So, yeah. That's it, really. I wanted to end this video. Steelfur Speaks is going to be the kind of less structured, more let's just talk about a lot of interesting stuff that's happening in Fab, news, updates, thoughts about the events that are coming up, that kind of thing, as a format. I'm going to start numbering the episodes, give them names, probably code them by weeks or whatever, or something. I'll figure it out. And I kind of just wanted to address that in this first one. So, my videos have kind of taken off. I really do just appreciate every single person who's watched my video, left me a positive comment, sent it to a friend, sent it to someone asking questions about Katsu. I'm now up at 566 subscribers. I was at 220 2 months ago. So, yeah, just thanks a lot. This is a journey. You guys are on it with me. So let's play some Flesh and Blood. And I've gone really pale. I am not a vampire. Let's play some Flesh and Blood and let's have a good time. And I guess the final thing, just a comment. So I did a short about this, but I don't know if anyone saw it. So I was playing Genesis, Battle of Champions, right? And I got Louis' bundle from Kitchen Table TCG because I really like the look of his playmat. And I opened the 2 Jalara 2 boxes that I got, which is the name of the latest set of this Genesis Battle for Champions. So if you're not interested in Genesis, you can phase off now. But it's just really nice. So there's a short about this. So the developer, basically in those boxes, I got 5 print run error cards. They were filler cards. They're around here somewhere. They literally just have black text that says filler on. And the developer was like, that's not supposed to happen, obviously. And that took the place of all of your epic cards. So I was like, well, okay, that's kind of sucks. And he's like, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you 4 epic cards. I know which ones you were supposed to get in the box, but because you've been a bit inconvenienced, what do you want? And I don't know anything about the game, so I'm not saying, oh, I want this and this and that. I just asked a friend. He was like, oh, well, ask for 4 of this card. It's the best card in the game. And I'm like, well, I said it to him. I was like, you're not going to give me 4 of the same card. And he's like, no, I'm probably not. But what I will do is send you one of the best cards for each of the factions so that when you decide what you want to play, you're going to have that card there. So in the end, he actually sent me 5 cards because he said he couldn't choose which ones he wanted. So I got this Angel of Retribution. I think I've got 3 of those now, which is good. I've got this Bolt Shot. I think I have 3 of those as well. I have a Baruch, which again, I think I have 3 because the Team Covenant promo is one of these. Not Team Covenant, the Kitchen Table promo. I definitely have 3 of these Meteor Showers as well. And I have 3 Chrono Walkers. So actually, by giving me these, he's actually really nicely finished off, and maybe not finished off, but added to my collection of a few cards I already had. And when I start to build decks, I'm not building decks at the moment, I'm just playing it sort of casually with people who want to give it a try. When I finally get around to building those decks, it's going to be fantastic just having these extra cards to reach to. So 10 out of 10 customer service for Genesis Battle of Champions. And I'm just going to leave the video there because I could talk for ages, but we've hit an hour, which is kind of like my goal for these videos. So thanks a lot for listening. Obviously, as always, it has been great talking to you. That is why it is called Steelfur Speaks, because it mostly features me speaking. Hope you like the new logo. I'm just going to make it big again because I really, really like it. I think he's done a great job. There's also like a lens flare version that I haven't got working on here yet. But, we have a bear. And I obviously am really pleased with my bear self here. Steelfur. And I think the logo is pretty sick. And I have a plan to make pins that I will give out to my opponents at events if they. So that will be something that you can look for playing me at a future event. I won't get them super quickly. There we go. Anyway, I'm Steelfur. This is me speaking. Standing off. Thanks a lot for listening and have a great weekend.